Barb.
All righty. So hopefully you all have your paper. I'm going to walk you through one of our 5-minute demos that we do with kids frequently. This one is just super simple, and it's so flexible. You can use it for a ton of different things. You'll know anyway, and all ages. I know a lot of you know how to make this book, but there's something special about what I learned and how to teach it. So here we go. Follow along, do what I do. And you, I always tell the kids, you can put your paper on the table, is easier to fold. You also will need a pair of scissors. Sorry. Okay, so I used to live in a tall building in New York City. So let's fold our paper like a tall building in New York City. But one day I moved out and moved into a house. So now fold your paper the other direction. And this is our house. But it was not an ordinary house. It had one garage in the front. Take this one, the front edge of the paper. This is our garage door. I would go and match the edge up to the fold. Hard to do up there. Okay. And it had a garage in the back. So do the same thing on that side. Oh, also, it's important that your folds match the edges. We have to go through that first. The birds love to visit. So now pinch the top and fly your bird. Everybody can fly their bird. The neighborhood got so popular that we decided to split our house and share it with a friend. So now you need your scissors and you're going to split your house. You're going to cut, careful, don't cut the bird wings. And cut right on that fold line. We didn't like having our houses so close to each other, so we moved them apart. And that is the story of where we used to live and where we live now. And so you can push these pages together.
Nice.
And fold. Isn't that brilliant?
Yes.
I couldn't believe it when I first saw that. Stop! I've done this with kindergartners, and the next year they will come in and fold these books. They love them. And then I teach them that they can make the book have more pages by gluing books together, you know, and anyway, or put covers on it, whatever. But now you have a book that you can use today for your notes or doodling or whatever. And then at the end, maybe we'll share some of our books. No pressure. Just what you use it for.
No pressure.
No pressure. All right. So this is the Tab Classroom, Choosing Choice. And I'm Barb Holterman, and Andrea, can you wave? Andrea and I and Becky have worked together for about 15 years. Or 16, I don't know, in the same district, but all at different schools. And we all were very, learned about Tab and were curious and learned about it and transitioned to Tab pretty much Andy and I together and Becky a little bit later. But the really exciting thing for us this year is we are now at the same school. We're super excited that all three of us will be working together in the same school. Anyway, that's our good news. I'd like us to take a poll because I'd kind of like to see where we all are. It's about choice. I want to know, what kind of choice do you feel you're doing? Choice is just about options, choice in media or process or interpretation. And limited is like the discipline-based art education, and modified would be some choice, Montessori, or problem-based learning or examples. And then full choice would be TAB, or remember learning about Waldorf Reggio is full choice. So just so we get an idea who our audience is today.
Okay, I'll give you guys about 5 more seconds to answer. I know it's a tough question. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Thank you for participating and share the results.
Cool. Okay,
Wow.
so we have a lot of modified choice.
Yeah.
Cool. And some don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I hope it piques your interest today, after today. All right, thanks, guys. Did we share these?
Yeah, we did. You shared.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
All righty. So let's get started. So what is TAB? What does TAB, what does it mean? TAB is the acronym for Teaching for Artistic Behavior. Okay, so what does that mean? Teaching for Artistic Behavior is a philosophy that was started by some art teachers back east. I want to say, now I can't really remember, but in the 90s, maybe in the, I don't know. Okay, I'm not going to say because I don't remember, but I met these people in Boston. It was really exciting to meet them. Their philosophy has 3 tenets. It's the child is the artist, the art room is the child's studio, and what do artists do? And choice is not always TAB. You can have a choice classroom and not be TAB, but TAB is all about choice. So that's why they get kind of confused. All right, so why would we want to do TAB? Here's what happened to me. I started teaching in 2005, art, and the principal that hired me said, "Can you follow the Ehlers?" And I said, "Oh, sure, yeah, I can do that." So Ehlers, I don't know if you're not from Washington, those were our standards back in the day. And 2005 doesn't seem that long ago to me, but anyway. What I noticed about it is that I loved it. It was super fun. I was searching Pinterest, I was searching the internet, I was searching books and everything to find all kinds of great projects for us to do. And then the kids would do it. But then I always had 1 or 2 kids that would just be devastated because they weren't successful. They couldn't follow along and they would throw their heads on the table and cry. And of course, you know, they were the minority, but of course that's what sticks in your head. It bothered me. And I realized, okay, well, there is an Ehler that says students will create. And I thought, they're not creating. I did all the work. And the worst thing was when I would hang up all their beautiful art in the hallway, I'd be putting the bulletin boards up and teachers would come by and say, "Oh, you do such good work. You're so amazing." And I felt like a fraud because I thought in my head, all I did was teach them to follow directions. And so I searched and searched, and eventually it was when I was doing my national boards in 2011, I discovered TAB and was really excited. We have a video that we debated whether to take the time to show you, but it's so good. I hope you enjoy it, but it just encapsulates the whole idea of TAB.
Okay. Starting to come up with some ideas.
Sorry, I started too soon.
This is Cindy Foley. She's from the Columbus Museum of Art.
Okay, we're going to get started with some kindergarten image word match. I would like each of you to determine what is the word that matches the image in number 7. Okay, starting to come up with some ideas. Good. Get them in your head because I want to share with you what my daughter Adeline chose. Adeline chose art And as her parent, I thought that was awesome. But this is an incorrect answer, according to the testing guide. The correct answer is mud, and I'm sure that's what you all chose. Right, right. How can something so nebulous be
even-
so concrete? Actually, I think this quiz is a fitting analogy for the problem in art education today. Art education has been impacted by the standards and testing culture like all other disciplines. And in a lot of ways, we've been focusing on teaching things that are concrete, things like elements of art, art history, and foundational skills. In essence, we're teaching things that we can test and assess. But I believe art education needs to focus on developing learners that think like artists, learners that are creative, curious, seek questions, develop ideas, and play, which means we need to be much more intentional about how we communicate art's critical value and how we teach for creativity. So, creativity. Let's do a little case making around this. Most of this you know. So, creativity is being touted by business leaders like the folks at IBM, by like educational reformists, by folks in economists like even Dan Pink, as the number one thing we need for student success, economic growth, and general happiness. We also know that creativity scores in this country are on the decline. The Torrance Creativity Test, which has been administered for decades, has now shown since the 1990s a decline, especially in the ages 6 to 12 in the United States. We also know, due to Sir Kenneth Robinson's now famous TED Talk, that schools are fundamentally and foundationally challenged to cultivate creativity. But I'm going to share with you some research that the Wallace Foundation did with Harvard's Project Zero, in which they found the number one thing quality art education can do is develop the capacity to think creatively and the capacity to make connections. So then why is there such a disconnect between creativity and art education? I think there's actually a couple of reasons why, but we're going to focus on communication and messaging. Now, those of us in the field, we have been working to really move art education out of a defensive place. We've been trying to make a case for our own existence, and we're trying to move it more towards an offensive message, especially around creativity, but we're not there yet. And so we're going to place that for another talk at another time. Instead, I want to focus on a message that I think is much more problematic and pervasive. And I hate to put you on the spot, but I actually feel you are to blame. I mean, not you per se, but you as a group of people who actually really support art education. So let me give you some context. As a parent, I often hear adults saying things to children as well as to other adults and to the educators. Things like this. Oh my goodness, look how well you've drawn that horse. It's so realistic. You are so creative. You've heard messages like that before? Here's another one I think I hear almost daily. Oh, Cindy, I really support art education. It is very important. I mean, I'm not creative. I don't have a creative bone in my body. I can't even draw a stick figure, right? These messages are incredibly problematic. And the more, you may not think they are a big deal, but the more society pushes them out and society continues to foster these cliche notions of what is creativity, the harder it is for those in the field like me to begin moving towards teaching for creativity. Okay, teaching for creativity. What do I mean by that? I believe teaching for creativity is embodying the habits that artists employ. Habits, in particular, there are 3 that I think are essential to creativity. They are 1, comfort with ambiguity, 2, idea generation, and 3, transdisciplinary research. We're going to talk about those in a moment, but first, we're going to do a little audience participation. I would like each of you to use something on your person, paper, pencil, your program, phone, glasses, doesn't matter. And I'd like you, you're just going to get a couple minutes, to actually create something that represents the idea of metaphor. Go ahead. All right, be honest. How many of you had a surge of panic when I just asked you to do that? I want you to savor that sensation. You actually are off the hook, but I want you to savor that sensation for a moment. What you just experienced is, I think, the #1 obstacle to creative work. That discomfort is ambiguity. It's not knowing. I actually learned this from a group of teachers. We'd been working with them and they told us, you know what, we find that it's really difficult to engage our students in creative work, in particular, open-ended projects. It just makes it really hard. Ironically enough, later that afternoon, we had that same group of teachers and we gave them a challenge similar to the one I just gave you. Interestingly enough, almost immediately, a couple of them announced they needed to leave for the day. Another group needed a break at that moment, and still others stayed in the classroom but refused to participate in the activity. What we realized is students struggle with ambiguity because we all do. Now, artists, on the other hand, realize that ambiguity is part of the process. They take it, they identify it, and they tackle it head on. So if artists are doing this, can't you imagine if art education was a place where we knew students could go to prepare for lives of not knowing? I work at the Columbus Museum of Art, and for years now, we provided the kind of art education that our community requested. So for example, when we had an exhibition of the work of Claude Monet, we taught about his history. We allowed folks to experiment with his materials and his process. And then we finally would create lesson plans and allow others to do the same. In essence, what we were doing was generating content and allowing folks to make mini Monets. But then it dawned on us, we weren't actually engaging them in what made Monet Monet. And that was the way he thought. Monet's ideas were revolutionary. He questioned the natural world, the way we see. He questioned the politics of the time, and that's what made his work so exceptional. It was at this moment we realized we needed to be teaching for idea generation. So I'm going to have you jump with me now from one artist to another. The Lego movie gave us such a gift when they presented the movie this summer. More or less, what they said was creativity is not the Lego kit and the direction booklet, but creativity is the bucket of Legos and the potential for ideas within. Legos are just another material, like drawing materials, to help us make ideas manifest. What I loved about this movie was the idea of the master builder, or the person who has the courage to have ideas. But it dawned on me, in much of education, the master builders are the educators. They're the ones who have ideas, great lesson plans, right? But students are secondary to that process. Students are often more of the artist assistant, or sometimes even just the factory worker getting the project done. visualize a classroom full of master builders, right? Classroom full of master builders at play. Yes, play. Play is essential. Play is a surefire way to kickstart ideation. Artists play. They play in another number of ways. They either play with materials until ideas begin to manifest, or they play with ideas until they realize what media or materials they need to bring that into reality. Imagine an art education where educators were comfortable with the ambiguous classroom where student ideas and interests lead the learning. So, I need to be honest with you. Nothing in my career, my education, or my teaching has influenced my thinking as much as being married to an artist. I am married to Sean Foley. And what I can tell you about artists is that they're voracious researchers. They will research anything, bizarre things, right? And what I've learned is that they'll do anything that furthers their thinking. Let me give you an example. About 10 years ago, Sean had this idea that if painting were dead, what if he were Dr. Frankenstein? He immediately rereads Mary Shelley. He rewatches all the classic horror films. He then devours books at the library on natural history, history of medicine, anomalies of nature. He then starts purchasing taxidermied animals. But then he informs me that we need to go to London. He must go to London in order to study the museums of the pre-Enlightenment, and in particular, the early operating theaters. So in essence, his research manifests, and Sean ends up making monsters of his own, like this one. So what Sean was engaged in is transdisciplinary research, or research that serves curiosity. Imagine if the future of education was not about discrete disciplines, but rather was about disciplines like math, art, and science being in service to ideas. What kind of spaces might we create in order to foster that type of thinking? Could we create centers for creativity where we cultivate and champion and measure this type of thinking? So I don't want you for a minute to stop championing art education, but I do want you to be thoughtful about the chant. When we say we want creativity in our schools, we often say, don't kill the arts. But today I want that battle cry to address art's critical value. Don't kill the ideas. I want my own children to think like artists, no matter what career path they may choose. I believe art education is essential for 21st century learning. And with your help, we can flip the counterproductive messaging and allow our educators to develop centers for creativity where ideas are king and curiosity reigns. Thank you.
Applause. Oh no.
What do you guys think? I'd love to hear your feedback on that. That just blew me away. It does every time I hear it. There was a quote in something she said in there. I put it in the chat that just struck us when we were watching this for our. Imagine a classroom where educators were comfortable with the ambiguous classroom, where student ideas and interests lead the learning. I thought that's pretty powerful. And don't kill the ideas. That's exactly what led us to TAB. And take a minute if you have a comment. I'd love to see what you think or have to say about that in the chat. Or, I don't know, does anybody want to say something verbally? Wow, that would be good.
I hadn't seen that before. Sorry, I'll be quiet.
No, say it.
No, I hadn't seen that before. And it was the end when it was like the battle cry. I'm just like hand fist pumping up and down. Yeah, don't kill the ideas, don't kill the ideas. And I want to play that for every educator in my building and my superintendent so that they understand what it is I'm doing here. And it's okay that I'm not like, maybe I don't win all the awards at the art show this year. Sorry, I usually do, but whatever. No, I'm just kidding. But that it's, or like we even talked about not having an art show, but having a creativity cave. Like we got to change the message. Anyway, that's me. Anybody else?
Thanks, Becky. Student engagement, Frankie says, yeah. And Anne Renee says it's what she does in her work with More Arts, bringing the artistic processes into people's personal and professional practices to think like artists in their day-to-day. And one thing it struck me too is it's not that we don't expect every kid to become a great artist. It's more that the practices of the artists are so applicable to everything in life. They're good things that we all need to learn, sit with the ambiguity, problem solving, all these things. So let's move on, Becky. Okay, so the TAB philosophy, we're going to run out of time. Oh, it's only 10:30. Okay, good. The TAB philosophy. Oh, where are we going? Yeah. Number one, the child is the artist. So what that means is students decide what they will do. And as teachers, we introduce the children to new concepts, new media or different media, specific skills, artists, or genres, with the intent to provide students the tools and the information to further their independent work as a result of the learning experiences we provide. Okay, thank you, Becky. Move it. Number two is what? Number two is the art room is the child's studio. And we need to create safe places for children to take risks and make mistakes. We will, as teachers, organize and arrange, and then we teach students how to set up their workspace and clean up and take care of their studio. And next, what do artists do? Number three. We have this poster up in our room. This is for students too. I can have an idea, gather materials and tools to explore the idea, explore and make the idea with false starts, changes in ideas and mistakes. I can know when it's finished. I can put away tools and materials properly. I can reflect and/or share the idea, and also think about what's next. We explicitly teach kids what they're supposed to do. Where do things go? How do they do it? What does it take? What's it look like to set up a workspace? But I will warn you that the transition from a directed learning style to TAB takes time, almost maybe 3 years to get it fully running. That's about when I changed schools. After 3 years, it was going so well. That students that are accustomed to directions and being told what to do, it's very difficult for them if you just say, okay, now you can make whatever you want, do your thing. It takes time for them to get to trust you, to feel safe, and then also you have to teach them a little bit how to get ideas. Just encourage them. You want to spark their interest. And I notice every class is different. One class might be really into pony bees, and one class is not interested at all. And we also want to foster our students' abilities and find out what are their strengths. All right, Becky, thank you. Andy, it's her turn now.
So I actually got this idea off, I believe from Julie Toole, and I get a lot of resources from the TAB Facebook group. It's a great resource place. And so what Julie Toole does, and I also do this every September, in one of my demos, we have a conversation on, and I call it agreements of respect. And if you want to, it's kind of like in lieu of like your classroom rules. And these are agreements of respect that the students generate. So I ask these 3 questions, and I'll have it either on a whiteboard or a big poster. First question is, how do we take care of people in the art room? And I have the students write it on their answer in their own words on a sticky note. And then how do we, as artists in this classroom, take care of all the stuff? And then how do we behave like artists? So I get all of their input, stick it up there. I kind of review it as it's going on. And then in the next demo, the next time that I see them, I kind of compile things. Yep. Thank you, Becky. Great visual there. And I actually have hung this in the hallway for the whole school to see too. And I'll see, yeah, it's like an artist. Yes, thank you, Frankie. It's like an artist social contract. So it helps them take ownership of it. And so it's just a really nice way to open up the art room with the agreements of respect. So.
Sorry, muted. What do artists do? That is one of the main things. So when you are trying to get kids going and they need help with ideas, there's several ways you can do that. And one way is limitations to materials, or limitations physical or conceptual. For example, just have them use only black and white or something. Also, themes is another way to stimulate imagination and help them find ideas. You want to have themes that allow for a range of interpretation. These pictures, I'm not sure what but it was something to do with the sea or the ocean. You can see there's a fish but they did it all in a different way. There's a couple 3D boats, and there's the 3D fish or drawing or the diorama. And kids come up with their own ways to explore the theme. And next, another way you can do it is connections. You can notice connections that they are making, but you might have to, in the beginning, point connections out. The building block area is a lot of science, math that you can connect them to. This one in the middle is kind of funny. I'm not sure what that girl was doing, but she is a little girl. I think they were learning measuring. And so she was using the rubber stamps, but then it was fascinating. And I can't understand what she wrote either, because I don't understand that kindergarten writing. I'm good at it. Anyway, so making connections, and then the kids will start making their own connections. And also using visual culture. There are many ways to incorporate, next slide, art history and artists into class. These are some ways students have connected with different artists in my classroom. And then emergent curriculum, next slide, is a really big one. It's, that's observing the students, figuring out what their strengths and interests are, and then providing the tools, media, and instruction in response to where you see them going. You know, they love video game characters, cartoon characters, and we get kind of tired of seeing SpongeBob over and over and over again. But they're practicing their drawing, they're practicing their observation skills. There is value in that, but I do try to stretch them a little bit, like, okay, how can we have SpongeBob doing something different? Or how can you create your own SpongeBob, or combine SpongeBob with another character and make your, you know, just, you guys know, all kinds of ways to push them a little bit. They get ideas and inspiration from play. Play is really important for kids to experiment. They need freedom, the freedom to be silly, and also exposure to art and artists. And it's hard, and be patient. Taking risks is uncomfortable. Next slide. Okay, the studio habits of mind fit beautifully with the teaching for artistic behaviors. These were developed by the Harvard Project Zero, and there's 8 habits, and you can see there's observe, envision, develop, craft, stretch and explore, express, reflect, engage, and persist, and understand art worlds. I typically teach this by really going in depth to 1 or 2 of the habits each year or semester, and use the language of the habits. I see that you are persisting or persevering in that. Oh, you're envisioning your project, helping them label what it is they're doing that is an artist habit. Of course, there's posters up in the room, and next slide. One way I do it is set up tables with different activities for studying the habit of observe, and taught kids about what it means to observe, to look closely, to notice the details, ask them what do they notice, and then sharing what they see with their peers. And I found it interesting that the left side is a box of shells and rocks, and spontaneously kids got paper and pencil and were doing rubbings on the shells, and the little ones were just mesmerized by that. That they discover things on their own and learn to look closely. Next slide, please. So why tab? Why is this worthy? This is a long list. There's a lot of reasons, but I'm just going to mention a couple of them. Critical thinking happens with every single decision. They choose the paper, the media, when to begin, where, how to begin, when is it finished? How are they going to overcome problems? Composition, color themes, adding values or perspective, all kinds of things all involve critical thinking that the kids are doing, not you prepping the project. Differentiation. I tell you, not all art is realistic. Drawing. Kids really do want to learn realistic drawing, but they want to go from A to Z. They don't want to often put in all the work, and it takes time for them to develop the skills for realistic drawing, and you can help them do that if that's what they want to do. But I think it's valuable to appreciate the other things that they are good at the time, at their age appropriate. So stitching and weaving is very good for these kids. Oh, I know you have high school kids too, but I had K4 for many years, but even kids in high school that haven't had a lot of art classes. Model magic. I saw high school kids doing model magic this last year that I never would have believed. I couldn't believe this one girl got the smoothest finish on this model magic. But not all art is realistic drawing. There are a lot of things they can do, and students can be successful in their specialty. Okay, the best thing is the students are motivated. They're super excited to come to class. I barely have any discipline problems anymore. They get to do things that they love to do. My active learners are really engaged in physical things like the blocks and the Legos, and don't dismiss those. They're learning design, spatial thinking, problem solving, physics, math, engineering, and you can challenge them. Hey, can you make a bridge? How tall can you make that? Have a measure. How tall is that? Is it taller than Mr. So-and-so? Andrea has a story about that. There are a lot of things they're learning when they're building. All right, next tab, sorry. So here is some of my work with children on the left, and then here is a sampling of work on the right. They come up with amazing stuff, but you have to understand it's the child's art, and it's not for an adult. It's not adult art. What is that word, Andrea?
Aesthetic. So
aesthetic, yeah, that's it. It's not an adult aesthetic. You have to appreciate the child's aesthetic. Thank you. It went out of my head. Okay, next chat. Okay, so this is Eli. This was a second grader I had in 2018, and he became my expert in stitching. And he was kind of an odd little kid, but he discovered the plastic stitching stuff, and he just persevered. He kept doing it. He started making patterns, and he got really good. And then pretty soon I was sending, kids wanted to do what he did, and so I would send them, go see Eli, he can show you. And he became a peer teacher, and it was great. One day he brought me this, we call it a check-in, check-out sheet, and it's a behavior sheet where we have to check that he was on task and doing his work. And I looked and I said, what is this? And why do you have this? I've seen him, I knew what it was. And he goes, oh, well, I'm not, and sometimes I don't do my work in class. And I said, well, gosh, Eli, you are so great in art. You don't need this here in art, that's for sure. And he loved it. And there's a message I got from his teacher. Eli loves your class, struggles so much in class academically, but he has so much pride when leaving your class. He feels so much confidence and his self-esteem is lifted because of his success in art. And that's that kid that if I was trying to teach him to draw would throw his head down and cry in the past. But now I can help him feel successful and build confidence. And it really warms my heart. But the thing that killed me was we went to a Martin Luther King assembly that the second grade team was putting on. And they had the kids come to the microphone and say, I have a dream. This is my dream. And I was videotaping the whole thing. I had no idea this was coming. And Eli steps up to the microphone, and I was just blown away by what he said. Oh no, is the volume up?
Is it because Becky's muted right now, or?
I don't know, darn. Basically, he says, I have a dream to build an art studio where all the people of all kinds of people can come together and what was there? And live happily or something. I don't know. I just died.
Everyone would be happy.
And everyone would be happy. Yeah, it was so cute. Anyway, that is why I do tab. Oh boy. Okay. So next, I just have lots of pictures of some of the different artworks that kids do in my classroom. And we do collage and paint. And so, oh, somebody asked, I want to answer, somebody said, do you just set up a bunch of stuff and then let kids go mess around with it? And sort of, we do teach them. We open centers. Andy's going to talk about this a little more. We teach them how to use centers, but the recycled center, once we teach them how to use the tools and things, yeah, we let them use all the recycled materials and put it together and experiment and play. I think we got the gist of it, Becky, if we want to just skip it. As cute as it was.
Can you not see the screen?
No.
Well, it's just loading.
Weird. I'm so sorry. Let me stop.
So
sharing.
Barb, during this time, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Good idea.
So you mentioned that you have like this thing where he came, well, your students come and they check in on how they're doing. So do you do those like kind of throughout the week rolling with your students? Do you?
Oh,
like...
Shannon, that was he's a special needs kind of kid, and when kids in that school, when kids weren't doing their work or they needed extra support.
So that was something like above, like a framework
unique,
on.
Yeah, it was unique to him, and like a handful of other kids. They get this check. It's like a
yeah.
And I was just shocked he had it because he's so great. He does so. I wasn't that shocked because he is. I could guess, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. So how do you check? Like, how do you? Because at the middle school, junior high, high school classes, right? I have to have certain product or certain kind of like they're like, we want the checklist kind of a thing. So I'm just wondering how because I have peer reviews, I have like self-rating things, and I'm just wondering how you personally, how do you kind of like, instead of making it,
Are you talking
so-
assessment?
yeah, I'm sure you're gonna get to, but I'm just thinking like
Yeah,
how you show, because I do student habits of the mind, and so I'll have them speak to that. I'll just, when they're reflecting, they
yeah.
have to speak to, which of these do you think is your strength, or which of these do you think you're building better, or like that kind of stuff. But I just wonder how you do that.
Oh, you
So-
can apply. That's perfect. Go ahead, Andy.
Oh, so Shannon, I'm going to talk a little bit more about assessment and things like that toward the end, but there are some really great resources. I'm going to give you some books to check out that have rubrics that are based on the studio habits of mind, if you need something kind of concrete like that. So I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end.
Can you see it now?
See it now.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so this is a family cardboard night that I invited families. I gathered tons of cardboard from a factory nearby and had families come with their children, their students, and they brought their own utility knife. I provided loads of masking tape and hot glue guns. And the whole point was for kids and families to work together to create something and go through the process of creating, so that the parents understood why that was so important and how much it meant to the kids. And it was really great. It was a lot of fun. I got a lot of feedback from parents and families. They loved it. Of course, the kids loved it.
So
Andy.
very briefly, I wanted to talk about advocacy. I know we're kind of, I feel like we have so much to talk about today. Just a couple ideas. I like to send home a newsletter every month or two. And what I do is I talk to parents in the newsletter, like this one in December of 2018 was, yay, we're in December and I've opened up all these studios and I talk to them about different things. On the back of it, I'll have students, I'll get permissions first, of course, students like doing the studio habits of mind, and I'll label them. So it's a really great way, and you can incorporate different topics into there. I actually had one newsletter where it gave ideas on how to talk about the artwork that's coming home, and kind of sentence starters that parents can use, not just, oh, what is that? So very specific things that I had in the newsletter that were helpful. I also, when I first started doing tab, what worked for me, and when I got into tab, it was I think it was like it was right around the time that Barb was getting into it, and so Barb actually she came back. We were both kind of on this tab research kick at the same time, so she transformed her whole art studio over a spring break time period. And then she came back and started doing it. And then I did it. I came in during the summer and transformed my art room. And then before I did that, I actually bought copies of some of the books and I gave them to my principal. And she actually read them. I would print articles that I would think were really important. I would stick them in her mailbox and kind of harass her with these till she really kind of understood why it was really important to me. So anyway, she was actually really excited along with me because our school was doing a lot of training on PBL. And I said, tab is PBL, but it's better. It's like PBL on the next level. It's so personalized. So what she allowed me to do was have one whole faculty meeting where I presented to the staff at my school. And I know Jessica Eccleston, I think you were able to join us today. Jessica Eccleston is going to be the new primary art teacher at the school where I'm just coming from at Tewks Valley Primary. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited for you. Jessica, I don't know if you remembered this, that I did a couple of years ago. Anyway, I set up the studio habits of mine around the room, which was inspired by Cynthia Gobb. And basically, PBL stands for project-based learning, Alice. So it's kind of like I don't know, our school did a lot with it. So I set up the studio habits around the room. And so, and if you want to do a deeper search into that, Cynthia Gobb has that. I think it's on Teachers Pay Teachers. It's also in this book here, The Engaging Students. This is kind of like my Bible. I love this book. We'll talk about it more at the end. So anyway, set up the faculty meeting with this. And then I had I told all of my staff like why I was doing it, kind of like what Barb just she talked about tab, and I kind of did that whole spiel. And then I had them actually live it and go around into the different centers. And then they came back and they reflected with me. So it kind of helped to get the whole staff and admin on board. And it helped them realize that the art that they were going to see from that point on was going to be a lot different than those fancy bulletin boards where it was kind of like all the same things. So anyway, so those are two kind of ideas on how to get support from your staff and your admin, and also to get parents on board. One of the most important newsletters I think I sent home was one that talked about the developmental sequence of cardboard creation. So I talked to them, just like drawing, there's actually there's stages with cardboard creations. It's going to be kind of rudimentary at first, but they're going to get there. So please support them. And also the newsletter is also a great way to get parent volunteers in your art room. And it's also a great way to ask for materials. So anyway.
All right. These are art traps. Sometimes I've talked about ideation, kids that are kind of reluctant or decision fatigued kids. And we call these art traps, and basically it's a simple provocation you set out. It's unusual, it's unexpected, and you set it out for kids to find. You don't talk about it, you just put something out. On the left, I've got a box with paint and marbles, and they figured out pretty quick. And there's all kinds, it's whatever, something that you can put out. The other one is just drawing lines, dots, and then connecting the dots and creating a design. I love the spinner is for 3D for sculptural stuff. So it gives them spin, create something weird or creepy, create something musical. It's something that if they don't know what to do, maybe they'll find the art trap. And I want to address, yeah. Okay, so Becky saw Amber's, yeah. One thing Amber mentioned, not having supplies, you end up needing fewer supplies. I ended up giving away a lot of whole class sets of tools and things that I had, because you really only need 6 to 10, I don't know, 6 to 10 protractors or 6 to 10 of this or that, because all the kids aren't using the same thing at the same time. Some kids are in painting, some kids are in drawing, so you don't need whole huge, which is nice. You can get nicer materials if you have a budget. Instead of getting 30 of something, you can get 10 and then get a better quality. Okay, that was off track. Go ahead, Andrea.
Amber, I just saw that I think it was Amber,
Yes.
asked a question about teaching you want to teach the elements and principles and all that stuff. So I'm going to kind of answer that, I hope, in a second here. So the class structure. So the first 5 to 8 minutes of class, what I like to do in the beginning of the year, I mainly use this time to open up my centers. And then towards the middle and end, it becomes more like emergent curriculum. So what the students are really interested in. Now, I still teach the elements and principles of design, all that stuff. Those are in those 5 to 10 minute demos. So, and when I do those, it's skill-based. It's just enough information to kind of get them started so that students can make their own discoveries. So you're not giving them all the answers. I know it sounds kind of weird, but it works. So I usually have, because I was K4 for many years, for 15 years. And then I was, before that, 4 years of high school. But I have the littler students meet me at the carpet with the proximity closer, because it just is very helpful. So they know that they come in and they sit right at the carpet, and I'm going to do that demo. And I almost always follow this structure all the time. One tech tip that I want to share with you that I am in love with, I use the an app called Classroom Screen Share. I think it's in one of the photos in a few moments. But this app really keeps me organized, and you can put timers up there. I have little videos that I might show. I have like what I'm demoing for the day and maybe a couple more visuals up there. So it just helps my brain. Anyway, it's called Classroom Screen Share. I wanted to share that with you. Once in a while, I even have my students come up and do demos too. And because experts do emerge in this kind of structure. Let's see what else. Sometimes I will, even with the whole classroom 5-minute demo, sometimes I will tape them. If it's a demo I'm going to use year after year after year. Sometimes I'll tape students like talking about the centers and just show that. It just saves me a lot of talking, especially for those September ones. So that's kind of like a tip. I love to use WeVideo. I think it's really, really slick. Studio time. So the studio time, depending on how long your class is, I usually end the whole class demo. I say, let's make some, and they scream art. It's the largest chunk of my class time. The students can either choose to do the demo if that inspires them, yay, or they can do anything that I've already taught them. So you kind of slowly open up those centers. So they might just had a demo on chalk pastel, but then they're going over to something completely different, and that is okay. So during studio time is the time where I kind of, I become an art spy. So I go around and I spy on kids. I kind of eavesdrop a little bit, and I go like this oftentimes and then I'll say, oh, so-and-so, and I'll kind of highlight those studio habits of mine. I can see that you're engaging by, yada, yada, yada. So I'm constantly trying to plug that in. Let's see, everybody's favorite time is the cleanup time, right? Well, some tips for that with the younger kids. I give them a 3-minute warning before it's even cleanup time. And I say, okay, got 3 minutes before. And I say, hands in the air, talk to your hands. Okay, we're not making art anymore. I'm so sorry. We are just being used to clean up. And that kind of helps them kind of transition into it. Sometimes I'll also use like nonverbal cues. I will turn off the lights. I have a different cleanup songs that I use. Actually, it's pretty funny. At the end of the year in 4th grade, a couple of my students asked if instead of the regular cleanup song, we could play the final countdown. So that was kind of fun. So anyway, leading me into, one more little tip. I love tips. I live on tips and tricks. So if you have a younger class or any class that's not really doing a great job at cleaning up, I use this game I learned from a 2nd grade teacher at my school many, many years ago. It's called Magic Scrap. So you kind of see something out of the corner of your eye that's not put away or that's not thrown away. And you set a timer for 30 seconds, and whoever gets it, they get like a scratch and sniff, like a smelly sticker. That kind of is a cheap way to kind of take care of that problem. Anyway, so reflection time is where students are sharing their work, and it leads to understanding new discoveries and failures and successes. So I specifically train my students to be kind, specific, and helpful during that time, and I model that. I usually have one student come up at a time. Sometimes if students are working collaboratively, then a whole group will come up and talk. I ask a lot of questions to understand. And then the class gives feedback. I use something called the compliment sandwich, which I'll go into in a little bit. And Barb uses this also. So I ask for not really compliments, empty compliments, but specific ones. And then I also, let's see here. Let's see.
Hey, Andy, can I just drop in here for a sec? this class structures how every class runs. It's like every time they come in. You don't always do a demo. You can do it every day, but you don't have to. You can do it 3. It depends on how your schedule is. But
Yes.
this is a daily structure. This is kind of how they rely. They know they're going to come in, and this is how the class will run.
Yeah, exactly. And some, depending on how, like, and I always have this like up behind me somewhere in the art room, and it really helps kids understand, and it keeps it consistent and they know what to expect. So anyway, but some teachers will do like a demo. If you see your kids like high school, if you have them like every day of the week, you might do a bigger demo on Monday, and you might do like an artist exploration the next day. And then you might do more 2 big studio days. But for K4, I find if I only have them once a week, I really stick to this routine. It helps me, but it's pretty flexible. So I think we're done with that one.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Thanks. Sorry. Thank you. I was like getting a little bit lost there. There's so much I want to share. So I'm kind of overwhelmed here. And then I'm looking at my clock. So, okay. I think I'm going to get cut out a little bit of what I'm going to say to make everything fit. So you really want to keep things that you want to consider. You want students to have access to the materials. You don't want to hide them away unless they're really sharp and you don't want the little guys into certain things. So there are things that I actually do hide away. And then I have like the 3rd and the 4th graders who they know how to access them. So now I prefer organizing everything into centers. So I have a drawing center, and everything in that center will have the resources and the signage. I generally keep the painting and printmaking close to the sink. So you really want to organize it. It's very specific to the space that you're working in. I like to use clear bins so students can see exactly what's inside of them. And then I also use carts for little pop-up emergent centers too. I slowly open up the centers, and then I specifically teach and set the setup and the cleanup of each center. I use words and pictures of where things go or on containers, so they know exactly what's supposed to be in there. And then sometimes, if students are not managing the center, one time I had to close down the sculpture center. So I bought the caution tape from the dollar store and I made a big joke out of it, but what a bummer. We had to close it down because it wasn't being maintained, and they earned it. They had to earn it back, but they really worked hard to get it back and it kind of showed them like, hey, I'm serious. Like, I'm not here to clean up after you guys. I have 3 kids of my own. I can't be having this, so, anyway, you also want to think about where are you going to store all their work? Like where are you going to store their 3D work? Where are you going to store their 2D work and all of that stuff? So you kind of want to consider those things beforehand. My favorite tip is to call a tab buddy. I'm always calling Barb and Becky and Amy and saying, how do you do this? And what do you think about that? And what works for you? So I'm always brainstorming with fellow tabbers. I'm always posting things not always, but I'm always looking on the tab Facebook page to kind of get ideas and resources. And I also like to shop for containers and organizational things at Goodwill. I think that's kind of fun. So you can see here, these are actually photos because I moved out of my old art room and now I'm in like this empty space here, which I'm excited to create. And I have all this to do in the next week. But these are pictures from Amy Struble, and she's another elementary tab art teacher in the district. And you can see here on the left, she has her sculpture center organized, and they're all in clear containers. So you can see actually what's in each spot there. And some art teachers actually have another system like this in the hallway or at the entrance of the school where people can donate materials like that. You can see how she organizes with the pictures too. And also here, it's a great example of the signage that is very specific to opening, to setting up and starting your, what you need for, if you're going to paint that day, you need your apron, you need your mat, you need this and that. So it's really, it makes students independent and makes them own it. Couldn't read that last comment. So signage is something I was just talking about. It's pretty important because sometimes they just need a little bit of reminder of things, of some of the demos. So all of these signs are put up after that demo, and it's just it's a reminder. Trying to speed through some of this.
Next one.
Next one. Okay, so this is probably one of my most important signs in my entire art room for K4. This is the types of studio work poster. And this is really important because it lets students, other teachers in your building, visitors, admin, and parents know what kind of work happens and is expected in the art studio. And we'll talk about a wow piece, the wow piece part of that in a few moments. And so the whole group demo, we did that with you in the very beginning when we made the book. So that's kind of a one small idea for that. So the demos are brief and concise, and they can be anything. And this is where that question before, this is how in the demos, that's where we teach those standards. We teach the elements and the principles and all that stuff. That's where they kind of get taught in that time frame. So we're still teaching those things. Yeah, we don't have time for that. So reflection for me is one of the most important things. And it's really, when I was talking about the classroom structure before, it's important for me, and I think for any art studio, that the reflection comes after the cleanup, because kids will clean up if they have time to share and reflect at the end. So one of my favorite quotes from John Dewey is, "We do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on our experience." Sorry, I'm a little tongue-tied there. So it's really important for them to talk about why and how. And I often say some of the key things that I talk about is the story told? What is your next step? What gave you this idea? You can see the middle picture there. I have a group of students, and they actually were in a group together, choosing to work together on doing like an art show all about cats, because they all had cats and they all wanted to draw cats. You can see I was talking about earlier that my screen in the background is that classroom screen share, and that's where that helps my brain keeps myself organized. So I have like little videos that I might want to share. I have like this happened to be around like Halloween, I'm assuming, because of the haunted house thing, but just little things that almost like art traps, little timers and this and that. So I think that's a great resource. I wanted to share that. So so the compliment sandwich, that's how I kind of guide reflection when I'm teaching. So let's see here. So
and you can use that sandwich, Andrea. I don't know if you're just going to say this, but
you could say
ask when the kid goes up to share, say, what do you need from your audience?
Mm-hmm.
And the kid will look at, I need a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And literally you say to them, okay, you need the challenge. And then kids will come up with something and challenge them. Well, I challenge you to do this. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really keeps the conversation going, and you don't get a lot of "I like it, I love it, wow,"
yeah.
So
yeah.
it really helps the younger students. So
yeah, and even high school kids, we watched them share. They really enjoyed sharing. In Becky's room last year, I saw a lot of that. Next slide.
Okay, so empty praise is worthless. Comment on something that stands out. I noticed. How did you figure that out? What I often would say to my students is, who made a discovery today? Who learned something from a friend? Who turned a mistake into an opportunity or let a mistake talk to them? What's one thing that you want us to know about your artwork? So those are the kinds of things that I'm specifically kind of probing for when I'm leading a reflection. And it's so much, I think, is gained from the reflection part. One of my favorite pieces in the last couple of years was this simple, quick abstract art piece on the right. It's from Boy Logan. I talked about this at another thing before, but I would have never known the story had I not had him come up and talk about it. He called that steak for his mom. Anyway, it was a gift for his mom because his dad always promised his mom she would take him out for a steak dinner. And I just loved it. Anyway, I ask questions and I always relate it back to the sham. You engaged, you persist. So this little video here, that video up there, I don't think we have time to share today, but we'll have links to this. And this was after I opened up a sculpture center. And it's just, it really is, I think, a nice example of how kind students are and how valuable reflection is when they hear each other speak. There's some really good questions like, how did you attach that? How did you do that? And this little girl here, Maddie, she made this game and there's notes on how to play it. And then at the end, she's like, and we're going to play it during snack time. Maybe my teacher will let us do that. So anyway, we can go to the next slide. So assessment is what everyone probably wants to know about, right? For me, assessment is like, really, like even the word itself, assessment, it has 4 S's in it. I always misspell that word. So I don't know. So in a tab art room, I believe it's really important to have your assessment based on the sham. And actually, you're probably like, oh, how do you do that? Well, there's some really great resources. And at the end, we're going to give you a couple of them. You can do them. I have one out here. So if you are doing an assessment on the artistic process, maybe. So how is your student finding an idea? And this is a great example here, not yet, emerging, proficient, excels, which would be comes up with an idea, blah, blah, So you can totally do that. There's great resources there for you. What I do I know this is more elementary based, and Becky's going to talk a tiny bit about high school in a moment. So an artist statements are really important. So there's an example in the middle there. And so, what kind of, I made what is it? Is it a drawing, sculpture? And then my idea is important to me because, and you have them write a little bit, and that goes up with the piece when you display it. And it's really important to understand the learning and to understand that idea. It's all about the idea. So that's really important to me. Also, I have my goal. I always tell my students, my goal for you is to create, depending on the level, 1 to 2 wow pieces. And a wow piece stands for a wonderful original work of art. And so you can see on the poster up there, what makes it a wow statement? It has an artist statement. You worked on it over time. It's original. It demonstrates craftsmanship. It shows your growth as an artist and you're proud of it. So that kind of encapsulates what a wow piece is. One thing that really stands out to me is that the standards reveal themselves in the artwork created. That's I think a really powerful sentence there. So you'll see it. One way, if you, I have a quote down there, assessment, just like the art that's created, it has to be meaningful. It has to be relevant and unique to each student as much as possible, and also student generated. And Becky, you go to the next slide. I know it's like a lot of information. So TPEP, another thing, everyone's probably like, how do I do tab and do TPEP? And then how do I do, the CBA? Like, how does that all fit into this tab thing? So let me tell you something, tab is, it's distinguished. Everything that you're doing, student ownership of learning, differentiation through student choice, authenticity in practice, responsibility and accountability. That's all there. So, I mean, it's pretty, I don't know, it gives me the chills sometimes. It's just, it's good practice. One thing that I have out that's a great visual in this, the signage in the centers. If you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, it's kind of like, you know, 1 is this, you probably use this if you're a K-4 teacher. 1 is kind of scribbling, and then 4 is like really, you know, so it kind of guides them visually, like, oh, if I put time and effort into it, you know. Another thing that that Barb and I've done over the past couple years is to gather data, because sometimes for TPEP, you want to show that you're gathering this data. So first of all, we'll have like a notebook for each class. Now it's pretty hard if you teach, like I used to teach like 28 different classes. So a notebook for each class, and then you're writing down notes for kids when you're observing behaviors. It's kind of like an easy way to do it when they're in studio time. Another thing that is really cool and easy to do is you put up a big poster, and you can have the students come up and stick a sticker next to, you can have their names. It takes just a little bit of time, and then what sham they were working at, you know, were they involved in, rather. So were they engaging in persisting today? Were they developing craft today? So that gets them thinking about the studio habits of mind, and it gives you data at the same time. Barb also has one that says, what stuck with you today? Kind of like that classic exit ticket, which is really cool. So let's see here. What else do I want to talk about? Oh, one more thing on, okay, so yeah, I can skip over that stuff. There's just so much to talk about.
Questions, should we do questions?
Yeah, we should do questions. These are the great resources. I'm going to tell you though, if you do have questions, I mean, these books are that book, this book here.
They're easy reads, and they're really, really helpful, and give you a lot of resources too. And the appendices in the back have lots and lots of.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Can you get the rubric for sham? So that's a great question. So I actually take all of my rubrics for that out of these 2 books. I just photocopy them out of here, or I kind of make my own. And do you have any of those on file, or do you think it would probably be something, Barb, that they could, if they're on the
Oh, I know. You guys, you can get lots and lots of resources. Like that would be exactly. If there's a Facebook group, if you're on Facebook, go Teaching for Artistic Behavior. And then there's a section that you can click on, I think it's File, and you can search. You can go to Files and then type in what you're interested in the search. So I would type in rubric or sham or whatever it is. I often just scroll through them. There's tons and tons of information, and there's lots there. There's a website, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And so I piggyback on that. So the one that I was just looking at here on, this is from Studio Thinking from the Start. So this one is, I really like, because it talks about the rubric is master, apprentice, and novice. And I thought that was pretty cool right there. So, and that has all the sham here, stretch and explore, engage and persist, observe, develop craft. So that's a really great one there. And that's taken right out of this book here.
So my question to you guys is, are you just overwhelmed and confused, or did you get one little thing out of it? If you got one little thing, that would be good.
A lot to cover. I was overwhelmed when I first became a tab teacher. I was so excited. I'm still so excited. Can you tell? So I kind of, if you're
overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, like, so what I would do, I would start, just read this book. I'm telling you, read this book. 2 other things. We went to that, Barb is wearing the t-shirt, which reminded me, the Colorado tab. They have a conference in January. I believe it's over. It's the MLK weekend. And fabulous, like so many resources. That was an amazing trip. Barb actually went to the Mass Art, what was that?
It's a TAB Institute. It's a
Institute.
week long. It was very good, but it all kind of started. Went to the NAEA convention. Was in Seattle in 2018, and I don't mean it started then. We'd been looking and looking, but when we went to the convention, we signed up for every choice and TAB workshop there was, and it was just before spring break, and that's when it all just made sense. Because I'm sure some of you were like me. How do you meet your standards? How do you account for? It just was very, very difficult to change my thinking. But once I don't know, there came a point when it was like, oh, okay, I see this. I don't know, but it was after, for me, lots of reading, going to the workshops at the convention. It made a big difference. Oh, anybody want to share their book?
Oh, Andy, will you lead us through a reflection? Will you model? Like pretend we're your class.
Yeah. So what I would say is there anyone who would love to come up and share today? It's hard doing it over Zoom because it's like usually have bodies in front of me.
I will.
Okay,
Except
great.
I have to take
Shannon,
off my blur because I forgot that I did that.
Thank you. I think that's Shannon. Thank you, Shannon.
Here's my, where am I? Here's my book. I can't see myself, which is weird because then I don't know if you guys can actually see.
I see it.
There's my little book. I was so excited to make my little book. And so I started off with like the important things from the TAB talk, or the TED talk about TAB, which I really loved. And then I did my little metaphor, and I had to remember what a metaphor was, if it's a like or as, because that's a simile. And I was like, oh, that's English. Ooh, I have to do trans. So I was like, be trans. And so I love that a lot too, because, I have a lot of trans kids and I can now break open that and mean something else. So I love that. I love like multiple meanings to words. And then I did, so it's all wordy, which I did not like as much as wordy. But then I found I couldn't just stop there. So I had to turn it over. And so there I have on the inside, I have more pictures. So there's the picture. Where's the picture sides? Yeah. So like on the inside, you can find where is it? The good stuff. So then I had like little pictures. Yeah. So that was good. And I really will just reiterate that, I was not going to my classroom till Tuesday, and I did not want to look at it. I don't want to be there, and I was not happy. And now I'm like, oh my God, I have so much to reorganize in my closets and my shelves. And I remembered that. And so that takes time, and now I will do more time. So I'm like excited. So anyway, thank you guys. Because I'm not there at TAB at all. I'm just at like limited choice and modified choice.
It takes time, and you've gotta, yeah.
Yeah. And I love it. Like each year I just take one more little thing. And so thanks again for presenting and risking and sharing.
Yeah, that's great. I thought of something that I forgot.
Thank you for sharing, Shannon.
Oh, I do hope you all have a good year. This is really, isn't it, the launch Monday? We're going in. I hope you all have a wonderful year. And oh, I know, I was going to tell you that story. If you want to get a copy of that story, it's on, it's all blurry, but anyway, I lived in a house in New York City that there's a handout, and it's on the Padlet, Becky, yeah? Anyway, the link on the site, yeah. And there's lots, zines and things are great for kids to do, all ages.
Yeah, so we can stay on here to answer questions. Just I've put the clock hour link in the chat for WAEA members for 1.5 clock hours. It's in the chat if you want to bypass that and get it later, so you're on your phone. It is on the WAEA website on the virtual workshop page at the very bottom in the Padlet. There's a clock hour link to get your clock hours. Please get them in as soon as you can so that we can grant you those clock hours. And the video recording of this with all my technical difficulties will be there. And some of the resources that we've talked about in the slideshow, some of the images you can even click on and download. I'll even put, I mentioned into the chat, somebody asked about a list of art traps. I think that would be a great crowdsource list to start pulling together. So I'll put a document in there. We'll list the ones that we kind of work with in our classrooms. And then we can, if you come up with one, we can kind of keep adding to that. There's tons of resources out there. And just so you know, I'm just going to throw this out there. Barb, Andy, and I, Becky, are willing to correspond and help you guys with TAB. I'm super excited about getting a Pacific Northwest TAB centered group going through the WAEA, and so that we can continue these conversations. I even asked a question in the chat. We've got a virtual workshop coming up next month, and we have so much stuff that we haven't talked about. We've talked at you a lot, but how do you guys feel about just a panel discussion of just a Q&A session for like, even a question popped up with one of the pictures, like, what do you do when they keep creating knives? Like, how do you respond to that? And how do you
probably more high school stuff too, I think.
So I saw a couple like thumbs up. So I think that's a good idea. Can I share just one thing? This is my newest idea. I teach high school, and I have trouble keeping records, okay, of what they're doing. And so this is my new record keeping, so that the kids will help remind me when I go around and have individual conversations.
Cheese ball alert.
I know. And so my kids have to do a digital form, like to tell me what studio habit of mind they're working on for like the 2 weeks, setting their goals. So they have to do that. But I have kids that really can't and hate doing that form. They hate the online stuff. But I wasn't recording our conversation. So now in here, I can be like, okay, third period, Jack, working on video, did it at home, working on color space. And then that's checking off standards. So when I go to put in grades, they're actually a little bit more authentic than they were last year. And it's cute. So Etsy, and I'm going to try to figure out how to make these and maybe do a workshop at the fall conference on maybe figuring out how to make these, because they're so cool.
Real records out of real records. I want to see real record ones.
No, it's a real record.
Is it a real record?
It's a real record.
Out of town.
Okay, this is a Beatles sticker, just FYI. It's not a real Beatles record, but so anyway, I have to figure out how to make this.
Yeah, you got to get a puncher that's like pretty serious.
Well, no, you heat them up in the oven. You put the vinyl record in the oven at 350, and then it gets hot and it turns into vinyl, and then you can cut it and punch it. So anyway, I have to bring an oven to the fall conference, I guess. So we'll figure it out. Heat gun might work. Anyway. So yeah, those are, and I teach high school. I'm just kind of rolling into it. So we're here for you if you have questions. We'll put our emails in the chat too. If you're just like, oh, I'm struggling. What do I do with all these like crappy sculptures that they keep leaving in my room? Not crappy, sorry, they're creative, but then they don't take them. They're just like, you get these piles of stuff, and eventually what do you do with it? And so that I still don't know, but maybe we do, and we'll figure it out next week or next month.
The reason is because they just enjoy the process. They like making it, but that's it. That's it. Okay. So
any other questions for us today?
Can we ever do like a thing where everybody just goes to each other's rooms and helps them make their room cleaner and helps out? Why don't we do a rolling thing like that? Can we do that? That's what I want next.
You can come help me in my room. It's a mess.
Actually, Shannon, you don't want to go to her room. But I was going to say that one thing that really, really helped Andy and I is visiting other teachers, TAB teachers' rooms and seeing how it works. That makes a huge difference. And any of you are welcome to come to ours, or contact us if you're in a different area and we can connect you with someone in that area.
Yeah, that was really helpful. I know when Barb first started, I went over and I observed her. I had people come when I got into it, come and observe me. And I'm a big advocate of paying it forward. I've gotten everywhere where I am from observing other TAB educators and from conversations and from conferences. Practically everything I've told you today, I've gleaned from somebody else. So if I can help you in any way, I am more than happy to do it, because I really feel like TAB, it has changed the way I feel about my job and my life. I feel like I'm doing something totally authentic, and I feel like my students truly love art way more.
Yeah, I did. Earlier this week, I did a universal design learning, UDL training at OSPI. And I was amazed while they were going through universal design, which started as like making sure architecture and buildings were accessible for the handicap, but then it's developed into this kind of accessibility, inclusivity for everybody. And so it's making your art practice or teaching practice accessible for everybody. And I'm sitting there listening, I'm like, this is TAB. This is totally TAB. There were some good points to the UDL. So if you have any UDL workshops coming up in your district, I would highly suggest